Joyce, thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be here. We founded Genomics 11 years ago, myself and three other rather idealistic academics, with a vision to take the extraordinary advances in the science we'd had in understanding genetics in terms of human disease and to make a difference in human health and healthcare. We're not doing too badly. 11 years later, we employ about 150 people. We have offices in Oxford, Cambridge, and London in the UK, a lab and an office in Boston in the US, and another office in North Carolina. Central to what we do and central to our success is an extraordinary data resource that we built over those 11 years, which links genetic variants in individuals to outcomes, to changes in health and in other biomarkers that we measure in medicine. On top of that, we have sophisticated algorithms, proprietary algorithms that we've developed, and an amazing scientific team. All that has led now to substantial commercial growth. Our revenues have grown about 80% year on year for the last few years. We've raised about 100 million of capital. IP Group were our earliest investor and remain our largest investor. We're very grateful for that. I'm blessed to have an amazing set of colleagues. I give a shout out to my senior colleague, Dave Thornton, who's sitting in the fourth row back, and you can talk to him afterwards. Dave was on the executive leadership team at IQVIA, a huge company. He ran a vertical with over 20,000 people and $1 billion in his P&L. He came into genomics because, like the rest of us, he's passionate about using this technology to make a difference in people's lives. So what is the technology? One way to think about it is this. Until a few years ago, if I had the entire DNA sequence on a healthy 40-year-old, I'd learn something medically actionable in about 1% of cases. And that's because genetics has played into medicine through conditions caused by individual changes in our DNA. Those changes are rare by themselves. The diseases they cause are rare, and they're all collectively rare. And most of them have onset very early in life, usually in childhood. So if you get to age 40 and you don't have any symptoms of that kind, there's probably not much left to find like that in your DNA. That has now radically changed. Now, if I have the DNA information from a healthy 40-year-old, I'll learn something medically actionable in 70% of cases. So 1% to 70%. Why is that? It's because we can now measure the genetic component of risk, not for those rare diseases, but for all the common diseases, for heart disease, for diabetes, for breast cancer, for prostate cancer, and so on. And that's the game changer. And we've learned over many years of genetic studies that if you take a disease like heart disease, excuse me, there's not one gene that matters for heart disease. There aren't two genes that matter. There are over 1 million places in our DNA, each one of which affects our risk for heart disease. We've now done enough studies and used clever enough algorithms to identify those places and to work out how to combine the information so that we can get an overall summary of someone's genetic risk for heart disease. And that matters. What this picture shows is the difference in disease outcomes in 3 different groups, in a set of 100,000 men, groups just defined by their genetic risk. And what the figure shows is for each group, the red group are the men with the highest genetic risk, what proportion of those have been diagnosed with heart disease by a given age. And you can just read the figure and see that by age 70, for example, about 40% of those men have heart disease. The bottom curve, the blue curve, is the men with the lowest genetic risk. In contrast, by age 70, about 2 or 3% of those men have heart disease. So massive differences in risk. And also the risk accrues earlier in life. If you're one of the high-risk men, your risk in your mid-40s will be much more like a typical man in his 60s. That's one disease. I can show you many others. Let me just focus on obesity because it's a major issue in developed societies. This shows the average BMI of groups, again defined by their genetic predisposition for obesity. The red group are those with the highest polygenic risk. The blue group are those with the lowest polygenic risk. You can actually see a difference at 8 months old. 8 months old. Babies at 8 months old with high genetics for BMI are on average heavier than those with low genetics. It's very marked by 10 years old. It extends into early adulthood and not from this data, but from other data, well into middle age. If you take people in their 20s who have late 20s who have a healthy weight, those with unhelpful genetics are 10 times more likely to develop obesity by the time they get to middle age than those with helpful genetics. That's 2 diseases. Here's a summary across many others. On the right of the figure for diabetes and atrial fibrillation, people with high genetic risk are about 30 times more likely to develop the disease than those with low genetic risk. On the left at the top, men with high risk for prostate cancer, 40 times more likely to develop prostate cancer. For breast and bowel cancer, those multipliers are 10 or 15-fold. So big differences in risk, which we can now use to get the right people into the right treatment and prevention programs early. We've talked about personalized medicine for many years. We're now in a situation we can do that. But what's really exciting is in the last few years, we've learned that these risk scores can also help us pick which individuals will respond best to therapeutic drugs. The data on this slide comes from statins and from PCSK9 inhibitors, the latest cholesterol-lowering medicines, and they showed that people with high polygenic risk for heart disease have a much larger therapeutic response to statins. That's actually great news. So the people most at risk and the people who most benefit from the medication we have to reduce that risk. We have the best technology and we have the best data on which that's built. We use that commercially in 2 different ways. One of it is in the life sciences industry, where we help drug companies and life sciences companies find better drug targets and also find the right patients to benefit from their drugs. And then on the healthcare side, it's for each of us identifying what are the 2 or 3 or 4 diseases that we're most at risk for at a stage in life when we don't have any symptoms, so we can take the right actions, and more importantly, our health system can use their existing screening programs, their prevention programs, their treatment programs much more effectively. The short-term growth opportunity for us is in the life sciences, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but longer term, there is massive opportunity in healthcare. We already work with a number of major systems in the US, with some of the large academic health centers. Stanford is one example, Cleveland Clinic is another. We work with Kaiser Permanente there, one of the largest integrated care systems. In the UK, our tests are available from Bupa. We have partnerships with Spire Healthcare. We'll be announcing others with the major UK private providers soon. It's about getting this test into the hands of as many people as possible and their doctors, so we can actually start doing prevention in healthcare effectively. We have a major partnership in life insurance in the US, not using genetics to decide who to insure or how much to charge them. It's once people have a life insurance policy, providing them with the information that allows them to live healthier lives. They will live longer. That's obviously good for them. It's actually good for a life insurer if their policyholder lives longer, because they pay more premiums for what you have to pay out. It's done in a way where the life insurer never sees the genetic data. The NHS, in its 10-year plan announced in July, committed to rolling out this risk scoring, polygenic risk scoring, universally within the next 10 years. That's great. Even better, they're very active on that. They're looking to roll out the early service evaluation programs, giving results back to people in the first half of next year. We're centrally involved in that. As I said, we have the best technology. We're a UK company. At least at the moment, it looks to be a situation where the UK sees the alignment between the technology and what it wants to achieve in the NHS. The market just in the UK is huge. There are 30 million people aged between 30 and 70. The aspiration is for universal deployment. You can imagine if we're getting double-digit revenue on each of those in generating the risk scores and the reports, that's a good start. But actually, it's an important signal. I firmly believe over a 5 to 10-year horizon, this will transform prevention and become a routine part of healthcare across the global north. Let me move on to life sciences briefly. Central to what we do there is a software and data platform we've built and used internally for 10 years, which we've just made available to partners. We launched the platform last week at the big annual genetics conference in the US. We offer a range of alternatives to life sciences companies. There's a self-service version where they can license our platform using either our data or their data. to help them use genetics to find the right drug targets. 95% of drug targets fail in clinical trials. There's now overwhelming evidence that targets with genetic support do better, typically at least 2 or 3 times better. That makes a big difference. We're about providing life sciences companies with the tools to use genetics as they choose those drug targets. That's one way we operate. The other way is where companies can get our scientists to use our platform and provide drug targets for them. Both of those have this platform and our data at the core. In terms of the software platform, we launched it last week. We've already got a number of contracting customers with recurring revenue. These slides had to be in before the launch happened. And so early last week, it says we were talking to 3 customers. We're now talking to 23 after the launch events in the US and connections with virtually all the major players in the pharma space. So we see this as a massive growth opportunity for us. I'll show you some numbers in a minute. And then in the bit of our business where we help drug companies find targets, we've already delivered about 75 target reports to pharma companies or novel targets. There are already about 10 to 15 targets, probably more within a couple of weeks, going through downstream processing and pipelines in pharma companies where we found the targets. And in the newer area of using this to find the right individuals for existing drugs, we've got a number of ongoing partnerships, both in helping partners choose the right patients to enroll in clinical trials. When they've done a clinical trial that hasn't quite worked, can they identify a subset of patients on whom the drug would have worked? Or if they have a successful drug in one indication, can they identify other individuals who will benefit from that? Hugely valuable opportunities with our technology at the centre. I'll be around afterwards. So will Dave and a number of my colleagues. Very happy to chat to you. Thank you very much.